Our understanding by our count is that you're -4 right now. You've lost a net of 4 seats. You've had some wins. Gwen Graham won in Florida, some wins, notable wins. But what is your verdict on the night so far, not just for House races, but for your party overall?
Tough. It's a very tough environment, tough climate. It's the terrain we thought we might have, and it's uphill. You're right. Gwen Graham is a notable pickup for us. I think there may be some other pickups around the country, but by and large, it's just a tough night for Democrats. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah, you've been saying for a while that it's going to be a tough night, but you also thought there'd be surprises on both sides. I have not seen any surprises working in your favor at this point, but the night is semi-young. Let me ask you, though, about what your party should do now. What should the Democratic Party do in reaction to what is shaping up to be a very tough night across the board?
Well, look, politics is cyclical. We should not base an entire trend on one election.
But should your party change at all? Should the president? Sorry, Congressman. Well, should the party change? Should the president change course based on this election?
We have a presidential election in 2 years. This is a midterm election. The president's party always loses an average of 29 seats in every second midterm. That's the historic average. I don't think we're going to lose 29 seats. What the American people want, starting tomorrow when the fever breaks and the elections are over, is for both parties to cooperate.
Congressman, I know you just
on the ballot. We would have done it.
Congressman, I know you just well enough to interrupt you one more time and try again. Should the president and your party change course based on the results of this election?
We have to continue to stand up for the middle class. We've got to continue to talk about our economic priorities versus Republican priorities. And if we keep doing that, we win.
Congressman, can you think of a few specific areas where, assuming that President Obama wants to get things done over the next 2 years, assuming the Democratic Party wants to get some things done, what are some specific things that you feel optimistic that you can find common ground with Republicans to work on over that period of time?
I hope we can get immigration reform done. Here's what I'm concerned about, quite honestly, is that I do not believe that if the Republicans take the majority in the Senate and add to their majority in the House, who in their right mind believes that Ted Cruz and Rubio and Tea Party Republicans of the House are going to say, now would be a good time to compromise. Now we should meet them in the middle. I think they're going to double down, and so I'm not sure that they're going to be willing to compromise. However, we hope that they will work with us on immigration reform. 68 senators already supported it. We should vote for it in the House. I hope that we can work with them on issues like letting middle-class families refinance college debt, which is the next great fiscal crisis in this country. I hope they'll work with us on paying a woman the same as a man for equal work. Those are 3 things that I hope we can find common ground with them on. But so far, the early indications are that they're not going to look for common ground. They're going to push even further to the extremes over the next 2 years. I hope I'm wrong.
Congressman, none of those things are things that it sounds like you're optimistic you will be able to work with them on. They're all things that you hope will happen that are Democratic priorities, but not things where you think there is actual common ground because you just essentially said Republicans aren't going to do those things. So I'm curious about whether there's anything you think is feasible, realistic, where there actually currently exists common ground where you could actually meet tomorrow and get something done.
Well, I'll go back to where I started. I think immigration reform is a potential area where we can agree. House Republicans have not even been willing to let us vote on that. Speaker Boehner told President Obama months ago, let me just get past these Republican primaries and then maybe we can get a vote. We're now way past the primaries. We're now going to be past the general election. This would be a good test. If we can just get the immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform before the House, let people vote for it or against it, that would be a good test of where we can agree, particularly because 68 senators from the most conservative to the most progressive already voted for it in the Senate. So that would be my first example of where there could be agreement. Also, let me add that going into a presidential cycle, Republicans know that if they can't pass immigration reform, that they're going to have a major problem in a high turnout election with Latinos. And so it's in their political interest at the national level to get this done. And so let me just throw that out as a potential area of common agreement, not just because the policy is right, but because I think the politics would be right for the Republicans.
Congressman, I'm going to turn you over to the tender, or maybe not so tender, mercies of Albert Reinhold Hunt, Jr. Al, go.
Congressman Israel, we've talked a lot tonight, as we should, about the president's possible relationships with the new Republicans. Let me ask you, how are his relations with the Democrats right now today in Congress?
the president did everything that we asked him to do in this cycle politically. We asked him to help us with get out the vote. He's a very good motivator of our base. He did that. We asked him to help us raise funds from our grassroots. He did that. So he did everything that we've asked him to do.
Fred Davis.
Congressman, I happen to be on the other side of the aisle from you, but in
Yes,
your
sir.
answers to these fine gentlemen behind me, you were talking about, will the Republicans give anything? Will the Republicans give middle ground? What about you guys? Does a thumping, like somebody called it here tonight, does that make a difference? What will happen? It's the same question they asked. What will happen in the next 2 or 3 days to make America, which doesn't like Congress so much, either side of the aisle, to make America believe you really can work together on something? I hear immigration reform, and I almost yawn, if you'll pardon me, because I can't fathom that happening. But what can you do? How can you guys get together and actually accomplish some things?
I actually founded something called the House Center Aisle Caucus several years ago with a moderate Republican from Illinois who's left Congress, Congressman Tim Johnson. And here's what we learned. It was so instructive. The fact of the matter is that Democrats and Republicans are going to disagree on 75% of the issues. That's okay. There's a reason I'm a Democrat and you're a Republican. The problem is we're so busy beating each other up on the 75% that we will never agree to that we forget that we agree on the 25% in the balance, and we ought to just pass that. So once we are out of an election cycle, past an election, polls have closed, no more attack commercials, no more incessant fundraising emails from the DCCC and others. Let's focus on that 25%. And if we do focus on that 25%, the country will be 100% better off.
You do that, I'm voting for you.
All right, sounds good.
And he lives in California.
Well, I'll move.
That puts redistricting at its most bizarre
Yes, it
contours.
does. Yes, it does.
Len, he?
Congressman, I'm just sort of wondering, what's the outlook for economic policy going forward? Whether it's on trade, there seems to be some agreement. The president wants it. Congressional Democrats, some have said they want it. Do you think anything can get done on the economy going forward?
I hope so. I think one of the issues that we have, one of the challenges we have now is that people in the middle class, they look at these statistics that supposedly show that the economy is doing well. They just don't feel it. I think that there's a real middle class squeeze going on. They see the wealthiest doing better. They think, well, the poor, they get the government to help them, but what about me? What if I'm in the middle? So I think that middle-class economics will be the dominating issue over the next 2 years, and this is an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to try and find common ground on sensible middle-class security issues. I'll give you one. The biggest crisis we have coming up is fiscal crisis is $1.2 trillion in unsustainable college debt owed mostly by middle-class families. Let's get together and work on sensible ways to allow families to refinance that debt.